Good afternoon, everyone. We are the Group 3, and our topic is about the global divides. As you can see here, we have the famous quote of Muhammad Safa, and it connects with global divides. So sabi ni Muhammad Safa, hindi talaga ang lahi, kulay, kasarian, o relihiyon na naghahati sa mundo. Ang totoong hati ay sa pagitan ng mga wise people na marunong magkaisa at ang mga fools na naghati-hati base lamang sa mga pagkakaibang ito. Sa global divides, makikita natin na maraming bansa ang nahati dahil sa pagkakaiba ng kultura, relihiyon at ekonomiya. Pero ang problema ay hindi yung pagkakaiba kundi yung mindset ng mga tao na ginagamit ito para magpalala ng alitan at ng agwat sa buong mundo. So we have here all the topics that you will encounter as we discuss about the global divides, and we will start with the history kung saan nga ba nag-umpisa ang pagkakaroon ng paghahati-hati ng mundo. Ang global divides o yung pagkakahati-hati ng mundo ay nagsimula rin noong Cold War. Pagkatapos ng World War II ay nagkaroon ng problema yung mga dati magkakampi na bansa katulad ng US, Britain, at Soviet Union. Yung Soviet Union, ito na yung mga bansa kagaya ng Russia at Ukraine. Sa Cold War, hindi sila nag-aaway ng diretso sa digmaan, pero nagkaroon sila ng tension at paliksan when it comes to ideology. Yung US ay kumakatawan sa capitalism habang yung Soviet Union naman ay sa communism. Noong Cold War ay nahati ang mundo sa dalawang grupo, yung East na pinamumunuan ng Soviet Union at yung West naman na pinamumunuan ng United States at ang mga kalyado nito. Kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, hindi sila directly nag-aaway sa war o sa digmaan. Pero nagkakaroon sila ng competition when it comes to ideology. Kasi yung West ay mas naniniwala sila sa demokrasya at kapitalism. Ang kapitalism, ito yung sistema kung saan ang mga tao o pribadong kumpanya ay may kontrol sa negosyo at pera. Dito malaya kang magnegosyo para kumita, pero may pagkakaiba-iba sa mga yaman ng tao. Sa East naman, naniniwala sila sa communism. So ang communism naman, ito yung sistema kung saan ang gobyerno ay kontrolado nila ang negosyo at pera ng tao. Ang layunin nito ay para daw maging pantay-pantay ang mga tao sa yaman at opportunity. But in real life, it often led to limited freedoms and strict government control. So meron ako ditong libro. Itong libro na to tungkol siya sa Irish people, and it also connects with the Russian autobiography. So I remember how the government controlled most of their land and important resources, which meant that ordinary people had very limited access to private ownership. So ganyan po nag-works ang communism. Dahil dito ay maraming bansa ang napasama sa isa sa dalawang grupo, kaya mas lalong nahati ang mundo when it comes to politics, economy, at culture. Sa pag-usad naman ng panahon ay mas may dumagdag pang bagong paghahati at dito napapasok ang three world system.
I will discuss the Three Worlds model. During the Cold War, the world was divided into three groups called the First, Second, and Third World countries. The First World countries were rich, strong, and mostly democratic. They supported capitalism, where people can own their businesses and earn money. These included countries like United States, Canada, United Kingdom, France, West Germany, Japan, Australia, and Italy. These countries worked together with the United States during the Cold War. The Second World countries were mostly communists and followed the Soviet Union's ideas. The government controlled everything. Examples of the countries were the Soviet Union is now Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, East Germany, Poland, China, Cuba, North Korea, and Vietnam. And lastly, the Third World countries were not part of the First or Second World groups. They are usually poor, developing countries often formed colonies, trying to stay neutral during the Cold War. They formed the non-ally movement to avoid depending on either side. So in conclusion, the Cold War divided the world into three main groups based on their political and economic system. The First World Group countries were wealthy and democratic. The Second World countries were communist and controlled by the Soviet Union. And the Third World countries were poor and chose to stay neutral. So by understanding these groups, this helped us to see how different countries lived and interacted during this important time in history. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmate. I am Maros Kapilitanen, and I am here to discuss about the global divides. What is global divides? Global divides refers to the major differences between rich and poor countries, especially in terms of wealth, education, technology, healthcare, and overall quality of life. The primary divide, often called the North and South. Global North such as North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. The North has advanced technology and better living, while Global South, such as South America and Africa, struggle with poverty and limited resources. This division is shaped by historical, economic, political, and technological factors, including colonialism and unequal trade relationships. The two groups are often defined in terms of their differing levels of wealth, economic development, income inequality, democracy, and political economic freedom as defined by Freedom Index. 90% of the manufacturing industry are owned by and located in the north. Inversely, the South, with three-quarters of world population, has access to one-fifth of the world income. And that's for the South. That's all. Thank you.
The world is divided into two main groups, which is the wealthy global north and the poorer global south. This creates a big gap in terms of well-being, environment, and economic growth. The north is more developed because it has a better technology, stronger industries, and more wealth. Meanwhile, the south often struggles with poverty, political instability, and dependence on richer countries. This gap did not just happen overnight. It was caused by many factors. Some examples are colonial history, weak economies, poor governance, low education levels, and environmental problems. Because of this, many countries in the South find it hard to progress and break free from the poverty. So, the development gap is not only about money, but also about opportunities, power, and access to resources. And this gap continues to affect global sustainability and equality today.
Good morning. So I am going to talk about the closing gap between the North and South. So this is based on the PowerPoint. The North and South divide is a separation between developed and developing countries based on their differences. It is often criticized for creating segregations and widening global inequality. In the UN Millennium Development Goals, they are improving educational and healthcare, gender equality, global development, and partnership, ensures environmental development, and lastly, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. So the closing gap means reducing the differences between the rich countries and the poor countries. So we have the wealthy countries like US, Germany, and Japan. And also we have a less wealthy countries like Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. Closing gap means poorer countries are improving in their areas, while the wealthier countries are getting smaller. So let me give you an example. Before 1990s, in the lower income countries, fewer girls are enrolled than boys in the primary schools. But now the closing gap is developing. Girls are also enrolled in the primary schools at the same rate as boys. Thank you.
So next is about Brandtline. So what is Brandtline? Brandtline is a concept introduced by former German uh, Challis or Willy Brandt in the 1980s to visualize global economic disparities. So, may makikita tayo ditong image, which is the Brandt line. So, yung nasa taas is the developed countries or the global north or the rich countries, and then yung nasa baba is the global south or developing countries or poor countries or semi-peri or peri-peri countries, which is nabibilang dyan yung Pilipinas sa global south. So, this line or this concept is hindi siya para bigyan ng boundaries or paghiwalayin ang rich countries sa poor countries. So, what is the purpose of this concept? This line daw serve as a reminder of a global inequalities. Pag sinabi nating global inequalities, is nagpapakita siya na hindi pantay ang pag-unlad o yaman na mayroon ang mga bansa. And then, next is highlight the needs of international cooperation. So, ginagamit itong concept na ito bilang batayan para hikayatin ng mga mayayamang or the rich countries na tumulong or tulungan ang mga mahihirap na countries or developing countries. So, kasi kung may mga bansang nahuhuli, naapektuhan ng buong bansa. So, pwedeng buong bansa or buong mundo. So, pwedeng maapektuhan sa trabaho, teknolohiya, kalusugan, or sa trading. So, kaya hindi natin dapat tingnan na negatibo ang concept na ito because mahalaga ito dahil paalala siya na kailangan magtulungan ng bawat bansa para umunlad ang buong mundo, and then walang maiiwan na countries. So dito na yung papasok yung globalization na nagkakaroon ng interconnection yung buong mundo. So kaya yan, may mga organization na tumutulong sa bawat bansa. So yan man lang ang about sa Brandt line. So yan.
Global North. Global North refers to developed, industrialized, and wealthier countries. These are rich and industrialized countries. Highlights the imbalances in wealth, power, and development that persist between different regions of the world. So, ang Global North po ay tumutukoy sa mga mayayaman at maunlad na bansa sa mundo. Hindi batay sa lokasyon kundi sa kanilang kayamanan at kapangyarihan. Includes of most North America. Example po dyan ang USA and Canada. Western Europe. Example po dyan ng Germany, France, and UK. Parts of East Asia. Example po dyan ang Japan and South Korea. Oceania. Example po ang Australia and New Zealand. So the common traits is strong economies. Maraming negosyo at pera ang kumikilos sa bansa. Next po is high standard of living. Kaya ng karamihan sa mga tao ang pagkain, tirahan at edukasyon. Next po is advanced technology. May mabilis na internet, smartphone, at high-tech na gamit. Next po is better infrastructure and healthcare. Sila po ay may maayos na kalsada, tulay at malalaking ospital na may modernong gamot. And last po is greater political influence globally. Ang mga pinuno po nila ay madalas gumagawa ng malalaking desisyon sa international na usapan. So sa madaling salita po, ang Global North ay mga bansa na may mas mapera at mas maunlad at mas maraming karapatan sa mundo.
Good day everyone. Today I will talk about the topic of Global South. The Global South refers to the developing countries mostly found in Africa, Asia, Latin America. As part of Oceania, these countries are often compared to the Global North, which includes better and more industrialized nations. The Global South highlights the differences between rich and poor countries in terms of economic resources and opportunity. The idea the Global South became more recognized after the colonial period and during the Cold War. Many of these countries were once colonials, and after gaining independence, they faced problems like poverty, weak economies, and political struggles. The term Global South helps us understand this inequality. At ang Global South ay tumutukoy sa mga umuunlad na at mahihirap na bansa na matatagpuan sa Asia, Africa, Latin America at ibang bahagi ng Oceania. Kinukumpara ito sa Global North na ibinubuo ng mayayamang bansa sa Europe at Hilagang Amerika. Ang Global South ay nabuo bilang konsepto upang ipakita ang malaking agwat at pagitan ng mayayaman at mahihirap na bansa. Maraming sa mga bansang kabila dito ay dating nasakop ng mga kolonyal na kapangyarihang kaya't hanggang ngayon ay naranasan nila ang epekto ng kolonyalismo tulad ng kahirapan, kakulangan sa edukasyon, mahihinang ekonomiya at politikal kaguluhan. Gayunpaman, hindi lang negatibo ang larawan ng Global South. Malaki ang naitutulong sa mga bansang ito sa pandaigdigang ekonomiya dahil sila ang pinagmumulan ng mga likas na yaman, murang panggawa at malaking pamilihan. Bukod dito, sila rin ay mayaman sa kultura at tradisyon na nadadagdag ng kulay at pagkakaiba-iba ng mundo. Sa kabila, ang mga hamon ng gaya ng kahirapan, pagbabago ng klima, utang at kakulangan sa teknolohiya, may malaking oportunidad din ang Global South dahil sa kanilang batang populasyon at mayamang likas. Posible silang maging mahalagang pwersa sa hinaharap kung magkaroon ng tamang pamumuno at suporta. At yun lang.
Modernizational theory is the idea that all society go through a series of steps to become more modern, especially by developing technology, education, and economic system. Also, it suggests that as the countries grow, they move from traditional way of life, such as farming and small communities, to modern ways, including factories, sites, and formal education. So ano nga ba ang sinasabi sa teorya na ito? Pag-usapan natin ang modernizational theory. So ang modernizational theory daw ay para siyang isang recipe. Kumbaga para matukoy o masabi natin kung sino nga ba ang mga bansang maunlad. Ito ay isang stage of growth model na nagsasabing maunlad ang isang bansa kung madadaanan o malalagpasan ng mga yugto na nakasaad o nabanggit sa teoryang ito. So nakatuon ito sa economic growth ng bansa o sa paglago ng ekonomiya na ito dito nakabase sa kanyang performance at sa usaping statistiko.
So let's talk about dependency theory. Dependency theory it argues that the root cause of poverty and underdevelopment is imperialism as well. Dependency of poor nation on the rich nations. It is a counter-argument in modernization theory. The local economies are distorted in that they serve mostly the needs of advanced countries but not be needs of local population. Poor countries are poor because they were colonized, exploited, and made dependent on rich countries. Example, the Philippines sell those stuff and buy those things. So many goes from Philippines to rich countries. Agriculture, a big part of country economy faces trouble because of cheap products from the rich countries. So let's talk about this. Ang dependency theory ay isang pananaw na nagsasabing ang mga mahihirap na bansa ay may mga disadvantage dahil sa kanilang posisyon pandaigdig ekonomiya. Sinasabi nito ang mga mamamayang bansa ay sinasadya o hindi sinasadyang pinapanatili ang kahirapan ng mahirap sa banda upang mapanatili ang kanilang sariling kaganapan. Ganito lang yan. Ang dependency theory ay may dalawang ideya. Ito ay mayaman at dumadaloy sa ang yaman ay dumadaloy sa mahirap at pinagsamantala na mga estado na mga mas mataas. At ang periphery ay patungo sa mayamang estado. At ang core naman ay it means ito ay nagpapayaman sa huli ng kapisahan na una ginigiit nito na ang mahirap na estado ay naghihirap at ang mayaman ay yumayaman dahil sa paraan ng pagsasama ng mahirap sa estado ng pandaigdig sistema.
Word system theory, developed by Emanuel Wallerstein, explained the global inequality by looking at the world as one interconnected economic system. It said that countries are linked together through trade and economy, creating a hierarchy of power. It said that the world is divided on a three zones: core, semi-periphery, and periphery. According here, meron itong hindi pantay na pag-unlad sa buong mundo. As you can see the map have a different three color: orange, yellow, green, gray. In the map, core and blue map, countries are wealthy and powerful with a strong government and advanced industry, while semi-periphery in yellow the map, countries are in between. They are not as rich countries but have development, and periphery countries. Periphery red in the map, countries are poorer and often provide raw materials or cheap labor to the core.
So the next is core. So what are core countries? Well, think of the world economy na parang different levels. Parang pyramid. Sa taas, we have the core countries. These are the wealthy and powerful nations na may strong governments and advanced industries. Sila yung mga economic leaders natin. Now, paano sila naging powerful? They earned a lot by creating high value goods. Think technology, cars, mga ganun, and through banking, doon sila kumikita ng malaki. Kaya mayaman sila. But it's not just about that. Often, core countries get raw materials like metals and crops from poorer countries. Tapos, they turn those materials into more valuable products and sell them. Ginagawa nilang mas mahal yung raw materials. So, basically, the core countries are the ones that dominate the world economy. Sila yung nagko-control, sila yung boss. They're like the big bosses sa world economy. They have the money, the power, and the industries to control a lot of what happens. And sila yung may hawak ng lahat.
The semi-periphery represent a fascinating and dynamic category in the global economic system. It's characterized by a unique blend of state from both core and peripheral countries. While semi-peripheral nations show significant signs of industrialization and economic development, they still lack the complete wealth and global dominance typically associated with core nations. These countries play a crucial intermediary role in the global basic system. They act as both exploiters and exploited. On the one hand, they exploit peripheral countries for their raw materials and cheap labor.
much like pure nation do. On the other hand, semi-peripheral nations themselves are exploited by the pure countries, which often extract high-value goods and services from them. This dual role makes the semi-periphery a critical component for the stability and functioning of the world system, providing a buffer between the pure and periphery. Some proponent examples of countries often classified as semi-peripheral include China, India, Brazil, and South Africa. These nations demonstrate a mix of advanced industrial capabilities and significant economic growth, yet they still face challenges and dependencies that prevent them from fully joining the ranks of pure economics. Understanding the semi-periphery helped us to grasp the complexities and interdependencies of the global economy, moving beyond the simple rich-pure dichotomy to a more nuanced view of international relations and development.
Economically poor with weak governments and limited technological development. They dominate the global economy through high value manufacturing and banking, importing raw materials from peripheral countries. Countries in periphery systems, many in Africa, Asia, and Central South America. So basically, periphery supplier of raw materials, and the core, the buyer of the processor of the raw materials, and the seller of finished goods. Ang mga bansa sa periphery ay matatagpuan sa mga rehiyon na hindi industrialisado, kaya't mas mahaba ang kanilang antas ng teknolohiya at kalusugan ng ekonomiya. Bagamat may kakulangan sa mga modernong industriya sa infrastruktura, ang mga bansa sa periphery nagpapadala sa mga hilaw na materyales tulad ng mineral at agrikultural na produkto sa mga maunlad na bansa. Sa pamamagitan ng paggawa ng low cost of goods at pag-angat ng mga hilaw na materyales, nakikilok pa rin sila sa global na merkado, ngunit isang hindi pantay na antas sa kalakalan.